to this new normal. So bear with me as I kind of navigate that on my very Hello, YouTube and podcasters. I'm super excited to be here with you today. My name's Nicole McKinney. Hopefully you watched the welcome video to tell you a little bit about what sorts of content we're going to talk about here on the show. Interestingly enough, you're getting me right after I've gotten Invisalign and put on my teeth. So I'm still trying to adjust to this new normal. So bear with me as I kind of navigate that on my very first YouTube podcasting session. So you're getting me firsthand as I'm kind of trial and erroring this new me. So today we're going to talk about how I transitioned from my full-time job making $170,000 to focus on a couple of businesses that I own. So hopefully this content's helpful. Consider this podcast here for someone who is in the throes of thinking about transitioning to owning a business, or already owns a business and really wants to expand that or take it to the next level, but has a full-time job. Maybe that job's holding them back. This is really what a lot of this content's going to be around. It's going to be around how you can make that transition, make that leap, what sorts of jobs are out there for folks like you who are interested in entrepreneurship, but really hasn't figured out how to get there yet. We're going to talk through some of the tactical and strategic ways you can do just that. So we're talking about why and how I transitioned from my full-time job. But I think it's very important to also talk about some of the things that folks consider benefits of a full-time job. So as many of you guys know, full-time jobs give you a couple of things: good health insurance, potentially a decent 401k, life insurance in most cases. And then some people like to say they get a guaranteed paycheck. I am not of the opinion it's ever a guaranteed paycheck. I worked in corporate America for over 10 years. You always hear about cost reductions, short or early retirements, and layoffs, right? Those are things you're going to hear about in corporate functions every single, all the time. I won't say every single day, but generally fiscal year end, there's discussion around how they can do some cost saving initiatives across a company, right? That's just normal jargon that's talked about in a corporate job. So as I was kind of, thinking about when I might make that transition out, which was really about a year and a half ago, life insurance, 401k, health insurance, and then that paycheck, that steady paycheck you get are things you want to think through as kind of those positives of working in a corporate job. The things I didn't like about corporate America, not a whole bunch, but there's some things that are just clearly important to me. I like autonomy and say so in the things that I'm doing every single day. And I always felt like no matter how I was a senior manager by the time I was transitioning out. And even though I was a senior manager, I didn't feel like I had much say so. That I could give feedback and perspective. And I do believe my leadership listened to that. But just generally speaking, I just didn't feel like I had a lot of control over my destiny in a corporate job. And that to me was always concerning. Look, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, so I really do like being in control of my surroundings and understanding, how decisions are going to impact me and my team. And I always felt like I was learning as information was disseminated and not a part of the process where decision-making was occurring, right? And that loss of power, that loss of, being able to help, with the decision-making, something that may impact you and your family, not having the ability to be at that table and be a part of those discussions was always a frustration for me. For other folks, they may not care, right? They may say, well, they're going to do whatever they want to do either way. Why do I need to be in the room? Well, you don't want to just be in the room for the sake of being in the room. You actually want to be a decision maker in those rooms, and oftentimes you're not. And so that was one thing that always kind of stood out to me. Another thing that really stood out to me personally was all around income. I got to be totally honest. I think 10 years ago when I started and it was a little bit before that, my first job was really a part-time job. My background, just so you know a little bit more about me, and I'll talk about that a lot throughout these series as we go around. But just to start, didn't come from much of anything, right? I know all about poverty, low income, subsidized housing or low income housing. Paper food stamps were definitely something that I remember when I was a kid. I came from absolutely nothing, right? So as I'm talking about the content that we're going to As I talk about things here on this podcast and this YouTube channel, keep in mind that if I can do it, so can you. And I think that's super important as you are listening to me. Hopefully you see a little bit of yourself, right? Because I'll be fully honest, I didn't come from a small $1 million loan. I came from absolutely nothing and started there. And I've kind of built my way up to a point where I've been able to do what I just told you, leave a job, making $170,000 to focus on entrepreneurship. So I say all that because I think it's important as we kind of talk through these things to kind of understand, well, how did I do it, right? And so very strategic initiatives or very strategic things that I had to do to get to that point. So I talked about, the things that are good about corporate America. I talked a little bit about the things that I didn't like, and I didn't touch on the income just yet. Getting back in order. Income. It was one of those things that 10 plus years ago when I started off in my career, background in accounting, my bachelor's degree is in accounting. I have an MBA with a focus on finance and accounting. Did a part-time accounting job as one of my very first sort of functions. But about 10 plus years ago, I got my first full-time job at a company, and started off making absolutely nothing. I think I maybe $45,000 or $55,000. I really don't know, but something around in that area is what I made on an annual basis. And so I've kind of scaled up, right? When I transitioned out of my full-time job, I've mentioned $170,000 a couple of times, but it was about 140 base and a 20% bonus. That 20% generally would go up, right? I think once in my 10-year career, I didn't receive my bonus or a full bonus amount, and it was the year of COVID, the year of unknown, right? And so generally speaking, you're going to get your money as it relates to your bonus. A lot of people like to consider that not a part of their income. I did, and it generally came in. So all in all, 20% bonus, $140,000 salary got me to that 170. And that was after being in corporate America for around 10 years. And every 2 years I was getting a promotion, right? So that was kind of my threshold or my tolerance. By the time I was hitting that 2-year mark, I hoped to have had an operational and effective organization stood up or process stood up such that I could transition out of that role into a promotional opportunity and continue to increase my salary. But what I've realized over the past 4 or 5 years is that the growth potential in corporate America is significantly lower than that of owning a business. The scales are they're not even equivalent at all. Unless you're a senior VP, executive VP, or the CEO of a company, often the salary that you're going to make has a ceiling. And that pay and that income ceiling in corporate America was really one of those things I think that helped me decide that corporate America was no longer for me. Guys, when I started this business about 5 years ago, I'll tell you the story of how I did that in an episode upcoming, kind of what the process was. I own 2 businesses now, but the first business that I've, that's been sort of that primary income stream for my family and the employees that are on the team, I started off making around $2,000 a month, doing it part-time. And this was just when it was just me, right? Not bad. And so as I kind of think about, corporate America, income ceilings and business and, owning your own business, the ceilings there are no ceilings when you own a business. And I think that's the most important thing. There are no income limitations. There are no ceilings as it relates to how much money you can make if you own a business. The only limits are within yourself. And so if you can overcome limits, if you can overcome setting those limits for yourself and just believe and focus in on how you can continue to exponentially grow, I truly believe entrepreneurship is the area for you to be in because there are no ceilings, there are no limits on the amount of money and income that you can make. And so I wanted to kind of say that. I think that's super important. I want folks to know that growth from a financing and income standpoint comes from entrepreneurship a lot faster than if you sit in a corporate job and you spend 20 or 30 years. It's just significantly different. So good. I talked about the good things in corporate America. I talked a little bit about the things I did not like. And then now I want to spend a little bit of time talking about my evaluation process. And it was fairly straightforward. Honestly, about a year and a half ago, I went ahead and started a life insurance plan. That was one of the very first things that I did for my family. Let's get life insurance outside of my full-time job. So that was the first step. I did that, fairly seamless process. It was basically at that point the equivalent of what I had at my full-time job. I've since transitioned to almost double what I had in my full-time job. And I think in your full-time job, you usually get, at mine, and everyone I think is slightly different. I think we got 6 times our base pay in insurance. So I got the equivalent the first round. Then I got double that in the second round. I've got, double the insurance now that I had with my employer from a life insurance standpoint. The next thing I wanted to do was evaluate health insurance. Guys, I have 2 little ones at home and a spouse. I'm the primary source of income, and our health insurance was carried by me. So that means I have to have health insurance outside of my employer. So I started hunting that down. Where was I going to go to get health insurance? So I went out and looked at your standard marketplace, your state providers like Blue Cross, Blue Shield, United Healthcare, all of those folks, and just evaluated pricing for having health insurance outside of my full-time job. I did the analysis. It was, and I love to talk numbers, so we'll do a lot of that throughout this show. But I think I now pay around $1,500 for our health insurance, and a few $100 for a dental plan and a vision plan that my spouse was insisting that we get. So under $2,000 a month for health insurance for my family. Now, I own 2 businesses, so when I say that, it may seem daunting. There are plans and subsidized health insurance plans out there, so you can always evaluate and see if maybe there's some discounts and things that you can get if you need health insurance as you're transitioning out of your full-time job. For me, it was very cost effective. It didn't have a negative impact on me, and I was very comfortable after kind of hearing what it was going to look like from a financial standpoint for my family to take on health insurance. Next was 401k. So I just evaluated what was it going to take, what were the steps I needed to take to get some sort of retirement savings plan stood up. So at my employer, I actually got 10% invested into my retirement savings plan. 6 of that was you give 6, they match 6. And I always tell folks, whatever your employer will match, you should contribute, right? That's free money in your pocket. Oftentimes during a downturn or when you start losing money, you're typically going to lose. And if you think about it the way I did, you're going to lose the money that your employer actually gave you and not your dollars that you've been putting into your investment plan or into your retirement savings plan. So that always gave me, security in knowing, hey, even during a downturn, if I lose 50% of what I've vested, I'm actually only going to lose what my corporate job is actually funded in the account. So think about it from that standpoint and make sure you're always at least doing a contribution up to what your employer will match. And so I was looking to see, what would I do from a retirement savings plan? There are tons of options for small business owners. I landed on a self-employed pension plan. The maximum contribution that you can do in a plan like this, it goes up every year, but right now it's around $61,000 that you can contribute to that plan. And so again, I looked at those things, evaluated where I was at, kind of just did a quick evaluation to see what it was going to take for me to make that transition. And then I did it, guys. I was propelled to do it because of various reasons, one of which was a car accident on my way into my full-time job. I actually got in a fender bender, and I realized, why in the world am I waking up and getting in morning traffic to go into a full-time job that I didn't have the passion for any longer? So that helped propel the decision. But most importantly, I evaluated very cautiously all the steps I needed to take to leave that $170,000 on the table and focus on entrepreneurship with my family. Hopefully this was a good, helpful video for you all, podcast. If you have any questions or want me to elaborate on things that I did specifically during that process, leave it in the comments section, subscribe to our channel, and I appreciate you guys listening in today. This is Nicole McKinney signing out.